They turned off the heat in January. I remember because I could see my breath inside my own bedroom. The bedroom where I'd rocked my babies to sleep 40 years ago, where I'd nursed my late husband through his final illness, where I'd lived every significant moment of my adult life. I'm Barbara Henderson, and this is the story of how my own children tried to freeze me out of existence. Before I tell you what I did to them, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or state in the comments. I hope you're somewhere warm, because what I'm about to share will chill you to the bone. It started 6 months after my husband Richard died. I was 73, living in our family home in Charleston, South Carolina, a beautiful 3-story historic property worth over $2 million. Richard and I had built a comfortable life. We'd been smart with our money, invested well, and had substantial savings. We'd raised 3 children, Michael, the oldest and a corporate attorney, Jennifer, a real estate agent, and Thomas, who worked in finance. I thought I'd raised them right. I was wrong. The first hint came during a family dinner I'd hosted. I'd made Richard's favorite pot roast, trying to keep some normalcy in my life. Michael arrived with his wife, Susan. Jennifer came alone. She was between marriages. Thomas brought his partner, David. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation," Michael said before we'd even finished eating. "What situation?" I asked, confused. "This house is too much for you," Jennifer chimed in. "The property taxes alone are crushing. You're rattling around in here all by yourself." "I'm fine," I said firmly. "I've managed just fine since your father passed." "Have you, though?" Thomas asked, exchanging glances with his siblings. "We've noticed you're forgetting things. Last week you called me twice about the same question." That was a lie. I'd called once about his birthday plans, and he was twisting it into something sinister. "We've been researching assisted living communities," Susan added, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. "This one in North Charleston is lovely. They have activities, meals provided, medical staff on site." "I don't need assisted living," I interrupted, my voice rising. "I'm not incompetent." Michael's expression hardened. "We're not saying you are, Mom. We're saying this house is a burden you don't need. If you sell it and move somewhere more manageable, you'll have less stress." "This is my home," I said quietly. "Your father and I chose every piece of furniture, planted every flower in that garden. I'm not leaving." The dinner ended tensely. They left without helping me clean up, something that had never happened before. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the utility company. My heating bill hadn't been paid. When I checked, I discovered that Michael had somehow gotten himself added to my accounts, supposedly to help me manage things, and had stopped paying the heating bill entirely. I called him immediately. "Michael, the gas company called. Why isn't the heating bill being paid?" His response changed everything. "Mom, why should we pay to heat that enormous house? You're going to have to make some tough choices about whether you can afford to stay there." That's when I knew. This wasn't about helping me. This was about pushing me out. I paid the heating bill myself that day, but Michael's words haunted me. Why should we pay to heat that enormous house? The presumption in that statement that my money was somehow theirs to control made my blood run cold. I started paying closer attention. That's when I discovered that Michael hadn't just added himself to my utility accounts. Over the past months, while I'd been grieving Richard, Michael had systematically inserted himself into my financial life. He'd convinced me to sign documents to make things easier after Richard died. I'd been so numb with grief that I'd trusted him completely. He had power of attorney. He was on my bank accounts. He was listed as a co-owner on several investment accounts. I was furious, but I didn't confront him yet. Richard had always told me to gather information before acting. "Know the whole picture before you make your move," he'd say. So I watched and waited. Jennifer started coming by more frequently, always with the same agenda. "Mom, I've been looking at your property. Do you know what houses are selling for in this neighborhood? You're sitting on a gold mine. We could list this place, get you into something smaller, and you'd have so much more financial freedom." "I have plenty of financial freedom," I replied. She laughed, actually laughed. "Do you, though? When's the last time you looked at your investment statements? When's the last time you understood any of that financial stuff?" The condescension in her voice was stunning. This was the daughter I'd supported through 2 divorces, the one I'd helped raise her own children when she was finding herself in her 30s. Thomas took a different approach. He'd stop by with David, and they'd walk through the house pointing out problems. "Mom, this roof is going to need replacing soon. That's $30,000 easy. And look at this foundation crack. That could be serious. The HVAC system is 20 years old. You're looking at major expenses, and at your age, does it make sense to pour money into this place?" "At my age?" I repeated. "I'm 73, Thomas, not 90. I'm in perfect health." "For now," he said ominously. "But what happens when you're not? What happens when you fall down these stairs or can't manage the upkeep?" They were circling like vultures, each taking turns to peck at my resolve. The breaking point came in January, 3 months after that first dinner. I woke up one morning and the house was freezing. I checked the thermostat. It was set to 55 degrees. I tried to adjust it, but nothing happened. I called Michael. "The thermostat isn't working," I told him. "I had it locked remotely," he said casually. "Mom, you were running the heat at 72 degrees. Do you have any idea what that costs? The bills are eating into your savings." "My savings?" "Michael, I have plenty of money to heat my own home." "Actually, you don't. Not if you want anything left for medical care or emergencies. We've decided that 55 degrees is reasonable. Put on a sweater." "We've decided. Not I suggest or have you considered." They'd decided. I hung up on Michael and immediately tried to override the thermostat. He'd locked me out of controlling the temperature in my own home. I sat in my kitchen, wearing my heavy bathrobe and wool socks, and I cried for the first time since Richard's funeral. But grief turned to rage quickly. I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed that afternoon. It cost me $400, but it was worth it to know my children couldn't just walk in anymore. Then I called the thermostat company and discovered that Michael had indeed set up remote controls using an app. It took me 3 hours and 2 customer service representatives, but I finally wrestled back control of my own heating system and removed his access. That evening, all 3 of them showed up at my door. They'd tried to use their keys and found them useless. "Mom, why did you change the locks?" Jennifer demanded when I answered. "Why did you think you could control the temperature in my house?" I countered. "We're trying to help you," Michael shouted. "You're being irrational and irresponsible. The spending has to stop." "Then I'll spend my own money from my own accounts that you're going to remove yourself from immediately." Thomas stepped forward. "Mom, please be reasonable. You're not thinking clearly. The grief has affected your judgment." "My judgment is fine," I said coldly. "What's affected is my trust in my own children. I want Michael removed from all my accounts by the end of the week, or I'm getting an attorney." "You're making a huge mistake," Michael said, his face red. "We're the only ones looking out for your interests. Without us managing things, you'll end up broke and alone in some state-run facility." The cruelty of that statement took my breath away. "Get off my property," I said quietly. "All of you." Susan spoke up for the first time. "Barbara, you need to understand something. Michael has legal authority now. You signed those documents. Whether you like it or not, he has control over your financial decisions. We're family, and we're going to do what's best for you, even if you don't understand it right now." That's when I realized the full scope of their plan. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to take everything, the house, the money, all of it, and they planned to warehouse me in some cheap facility while they liquidated my entire life. I closed the door in their faces and locked it. Then I did what I should have done months ago. I called Richard's old attorney, Martin Webb. Martin had semi-retired, but he and Richard had been friends for 30 years. I explained everything. The power of attorney, the account access, the thermostat, all of it. "Barbara," Martin said after a long pause, "what your son has done might be technically legal if you sign those documents, but his behavior crosses ethical lines. We need to act fast. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" "I'll be there at 9, I said. That night, I slept under 3 blankets in my freezing house and planned my revenge. Martin's office was in downtown Charleston, in one of those elegant old buildings that made you feel like serious business happened within its walls. He ushered me in personally, concern evident on his weathered face. "Show me everything," he said. I'd brought copies of all the documents I'd signed, the power of attorney, the account authorizations, everything. Martin reviewed each one carefully, making notes on a legal pad. "The good news," he finally said, "is that you're completely competent, which means you can revoke all of this. The power of attorney, the account access, you gave it, you can take it away. The bad news is that Michael, Jennifer, and Thomas have already shown their hand. They're going to fight this." "Let them fight," I said. "I want them out of my financial life completely." "There's something else we need to discuss," Martin said carefully. "Your estate planning. Do you have a will?" "Yes, everything's divided equally among the three of them." Martin leaned back in his chair. "Barbara, I'm going to give you some advice as Richard's friend, not just as an attorney. What your children are doing isn't just about controlling your money now. They're positioning themselves for when you die. They think they're entitled to your assets, and they're willing to make your life miserable to ensure they get everything." The truth of his words settled over me like a weight. What should I do? First, we revoke all the authorizations immediately. Second, we set up new accounts that they have no access to. Third, we make sure all your assets are protected with new legal structures. And fourth, he paused, you might want to reconsider who inherits what when you're gone. Over the next 2 weeks, Martin worked like a machine. He had me sign revocations for everything Michael had accessed. We set up a new trust with Martin as the trustee. We opened new bank accounts at a different institution. We transferred all my investments to new accounts. Michael discovered what was happening when his access suddenly stopped working. He called me furious. "What the hell did you do?" he screamed into the phone. "I protected myself from thieves," I replied calmly. "Thieves? We're your children. We were trying to help you, and this is how you repay us. By cutting us out? You cut yourself out when you decided my home was too expensive to heat, when you decided you'd rather see me freeze than spend your inheritance on my comfort. That's not. Mom, you're being manipulated. Who's in your ear? Is it that lawyer? Is he trying to steal from you?" Martin Webb is the only person who hasn't lied to me or tried to control me. Unlike my own children, he actually has my best interests at heart. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," Michael hissed. "You'll regret this." "The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were sooner." I hung up and blocked his number. But Michael wasn't done. None of them were. 2 days after I blocked Michael's number, Jennifer showed up at my door with 2 people I didn't recognize, a middle-aged woman in a business suit and a younger man carrying a clipboard. "Mom, this is Dr. Patricia Simmons and her colleague, Mark Chen. They're social workers with Adult Protective Services." My heart lurched. "What is this?" Dr. Simmons stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Ms. Henderson, we received a concerning report about your welfare. May we come in and talk with you?" I looked at Jennifer, whose face showed absolutely no shame. "You called APS on your own mother?" "I'm worried about you," Jennifer said. "We all are. You've been acting erratically, changing locks, blocking family members, making sudden financial changes. These are classic signs of diminished capacity or undue influence." The audacity was breathtaking. They'd tried to control me, and when that failed, they'd reported me as incompetent. "Come in," I said to Dr. Simmons, ignoring Jennifer entirely. But she stays outside. "Mom, outside, Jennifer, or I call the police and have you removed from my property." Dr. Simmons and Mark Chen spent 90 minutes in my home. They asked me questions about my daily routine, my health, my finances, my decision-making. I showed them my medical records, perfect health for a woman my age. I showed them my bank statements, demonstrating that I understood my financial situation completely. I explained, calmly and clearly, what my children had done. "And you changed the locks because," Dr. Simmons asked, "because my son was controlling my thermostat remotely and keeping my house at 55 degrees in January, because I discovered he'd inserted himself into my financial accounts without my full understanding, because I no longer felt safe in my own home with them having access." Mark Chen took notes throughout. When they finally left, Dr. Simmons gave me her card. Ms. Henderson, I see no evidence of diminished capacity or exploitation. In fact, it appears you've taken appropriate steps to protect yourself. I'll be closing this case as unfounded. If your children contact APS again with similar complaints, it will be documented as potential harassment. Jennifer was waiting on the porch. Well? She demanded as they emerged. I can't discuss the details, but this case is closed, Dr. Simmons said firmly. After they left, Jennifer turned on me. You've poisoned them against us. You've made us look like monsters. You did that yourselves, I said. You tried to have me declared incompetent because I wouldn't let you steal from me. You're right about one thing, though. You are monsters. Now get off my property. Fine, Jennifer spat. But don't come crying to us when you fall down your precious stairs or can't remember your own name. We're done trying to help you. Good. I'm done needing help from people who want me dead. If you're watching this and dealing with family members who are trying to take advantage of you, hit that subscribe button. You need to hear how this ends. The real war had just begun. After the APS visit failed, my children shifted strategies. They went quiet. Too quiet. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from any of them. No calls, no visits, no messages. At first, I felt relieved. Then I felt suspicious. Richard used to say that silence from an adversary meant they were planning something big. He was right. I found out what they'd been doing when Thomas showed up at my door with a police officer. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Rodriguez," the policeman said. "Your son has filed a report claiming you've been threatening him and his siblings. He says you've become verbally abusive and unstable." I stared at Thomas in disbelief. That's a complete lie. Mom, you told Jennifer you hoped she'd suffer like you're suffering. You told Michael you'd make him pay. You told me I'd regret abandoning you. Thomas's voice was so sincere, so concerned, that if I didn't know better, I'd believe him myself. I never said any of those things. I haven't spoken to any of you in weeks. Officer Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, your son has text messages that show..." "Impossible. I don't text. I can barely work my phone beyond making calls." Thomas pulled out his phone. "Mom, these are from your number. Look, I hope you suffer. You'll regret this. I'll make you pay." Someone had sent those messages from my phone number. But how? Then I remembered. Michael had set up my smartphone 2 years ago. He'd insisted on installing helpful apps and keeping my phone backed up to the cloud. He'd had complete access to everything. "Officer Rodriguez, I'd like to show you something," I said. I went to get my phone and pulled up the message history. There were no sent texts to any of my children. These messages aren't in my phone. Someone else sent them, probably spoofing my number. The officer examined my phone. "That's possible with the right software," he admitted. "My son is a corporate attorney with technology resources and a motive to make me look unstable," I said coldly. "He's fabricating evidence." Thomas's mask slipped for just a second. I saw the flash of anger in his eyes. "Mom, this is exactly what I'm talking about. These paranoid accusations..." "Get out," I said. "Officer Rodriguez, I'm the victim here, not the perpetrator. My children are harassing me because I've cut off their access to my money. Everything they're doing is retaliation." The officer looked between us, clearly out of his depth. "I'm going to file a report documenting both claims. If there's any further contact that makes either party feel threatened, call us. Ma'am, I'd also recommend changing your phone number and increasing your security." After they left, I called Martin immediately. "They're fabricating evidence," I told him. "They sent threatening texts from a spoofed number." "That's illegal," Martin said, "but proving it will be difficult. Barbara, I think it's time we went on the offensive. Are you ready to do what needs to be done?" "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we take away everything they think they're entitled to, permanently." I thought about the cold house, the APS call, the police visit, the fake texts. "Tell me what to do," I said. Martin laid out the plan in his office the next morning. "First, we need to understand that your children believe they'll eventually inherit your estate. The house, the investments, everything. That belief is driving their behavior. They're willing to make you miserable now because they think the payoff is worth it. So we remove the payoff," I said. Exactly. We change your will, but we do it strategically. We also need to deal with the house. They're fixated on that property. I'm not leaving my home. I'm not asking you to. I'm suggesting you sell it to yourself. I frowned, confused. Martin explained. We set up a limited liability company. You sell the house to the LLC for its fair market value, $2 million. The LLC, which you control, now owns the house. You have a lifetime right to live there, written into the LLC's operating agreement. When you die, the LLC dissolves and the property goes wherever you designate. But where does the money come from to buy it? From your investment accounts. You're essentially moving the asset from personal ownership to corporate ownership. It's legitimate, legal, and it protects the house from your children's reach. They can't pressure you to sell what you don't personally own anymore. The elegance of it was beautiful. What about my other assets? We set up a new will. Instead of leaving everything to your children, you leave the bulk of your estate to charity. The Charleston Historical Society, the Women's Shelter, the Children's Hospital, causes that matter to you. Your children get $1 each, which prevents them from contesting the will based on being accidentally excluded. $1 each, I repeated, savoring the words. There's more we can do, Martin continued. All those bills that Michael stopped paying when he had access to your accounts, we can document that. And there's a legal principle called undue influence that might apply. If we can show that your children were attempting to exploit you, we might be able to pursue legal action. Over the next month, we executed the plan with military precision. The LLC was established. The house sale went through. I sold it to myself and immediately transferred the $2 million back into the LLC's accounts, which I controlled. The house was now protected. I drafted a new will leaving my estate to various Charleston charities with detailed explanations of why I was disinheriting my children. Martin made sure the will was ironclad. Multiple witnesses, videotaped signing, mental competency certification from my doctor. But I wasn't satisfied yet. They'd tried to destroy me, and I wanted them to feel consequences beyond just losing an inheritance they might never know about until I died. That's when Martin mentioned something interesting. You know, Barbara, with all the documentation we have of Michael's access to your accounts and the questionable transactions, you could file complaints. Financial exploitation of the elderly is a crime in South Carolina. Would anything come of it? At minimum, it would create a public record. It might affect his legal license. Jennifer's real estate license could be impacted too if she was complicit. And Thomas works in finance. Regulatory bodies don't like hearing about financial exploitation. I smiled for the first time in months. Let's do it. Filing the complaints was surprisingly straightforward. With Martin's help, I documented everything. Michael's unauthorized control of my accounts, the unpaid heating bills while he had access, the pattern of financial manipulation, Jennifer's involvement in the APS call, Thomas's fabricated police report. We filed a complaint with the South Carolina Bar Association regarding Michael's conduct. We reported Jennifer to the South Carolina Real Estate Commission. We notified the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority about Thomas. But I wanted them to experience more immediate consequences, not just professional investigations that might take months. That's when I discovered something interesting while reviewing old documents with Martin. When Michael had set up the power of attorney, he'd also had me sign several other papers. One of them was making him a co-signer on a small business credit account Richard and I had established years ago for property maintenance expenses. The account had a $50,000 limit. We never used this much, I told Martin. Richard would occasionally charge major repairs, but the balance was always paid off. Martin examined the statements. Look at the charges from the last 6 months. I looked. Expensive dinners, a luxury vacation, new furniture, electronics, clothing, over $30,000 in charges that had nothing to do with maintaining my property. He's been using it as his personal credit card, I said quietly. And you never authorize these purchases, Martin confirmed. That's credit card fraud. That's not a regulatory complaint. That's a criminal matter. We documented every fraudulent charge. Then we did something simple but devastating. I called the credit card company and reported the fraud. I explained that someone with access to my accounts had made unauthorized charges. I disputed every single purchase Michael had made. The credit card company launched an immediate investigation. They contacted Michael. 2 days later, he called me from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he screamed. "The credit card company is investigating me for fraud. They've frozen the account and filed a report with the police." "You committed fraud," I said calmly. "You used my credit to buy yourself a vacation and furniture and expensive meals. That's theft." "That was for business purposes, for helping manage your affairs." "A luxury cruise to the Caribbean was for managing my affairs? A $5,000 sectional sofa for your house was for my benefit? Michael, you stole from me, and now you're facing consequences." "You vindictive bitch," he hissed, his courtroom composure completely gone. "We tried to help you, and this is how you repay us." "Help me? You turned off my heat in January. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You filed a false police report. You stole $30,000. That's not help. That's elder abuse." "You'll never see us again," he threatened. "Your grandchildren will grow up not knowing you. You'll die alone in that house you care about so much, and we won't even come to your funeral." "Good," I said. "The trash is taking itself out. But Michael, when the criminal charges are filed, don't call me, don't ask me to help you, you're on your own." I hung up and blocked that number too. The professional complaints took months to process, but the credit card fraud moved quickly. The police contacted me to get a formal statement. I showed them everything: the account statements, the proof that I'd never authorized the purchases, the timeline showing Michael's access and the charges. "This is pretty clear-cut," Detective Morgan said. "Your son had access to your financial accounts and used them for personal benefit without authorization. That's theft and fraud." "Will he be arrested?" "That's up to the district attorney, but with this level of documentation, I'd expect charges to be filed." Michael was formally charged with credit card fraud and financial exploitation of an elderly person 2 months after I made the initial report. The news made the local legal community gossip circles. A prominent attorney charged with stealing from his own mother. His law firm put him on immediate leave. The Bar Association opened a formal ethics investigation. Everything he'd built professionally was crumbling. Jennifer called me, crying. "Mom, please, you have to drop the charges against Michael. This is destroying him. His reputation is ruined. He might lose his license. His marriage is falling apart. He should have thought about that before he stole from me. He didn't steal. He was managing your affairs. Jennifer, he took a vacation on my credit card. He furnished his house with my money. That's not management. That's theft. Please," she begged. "He's your son. How can you do this to him? How could he do it to me? How could any of you? You tried to freeze me out of my own home. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You lied to the police, and you want me to show mercy? We're family." "No," I said quietly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me. Family doesn't steal and lie and manipulate. You stopped being my family when you decided my money was more important than my well-being." Thomas called next. He was more direct. "You realize you're tearing this family apart, right? You're making us all look terrible over what? Some misunderstandings about money?" "Misunderstandings. Thomas, you helped file a false police report. You stood on my porch with an officer and lied about me threatening you. We were concerned about your mental state." "No, you were concerned about your inheritance. And speaking of which, you should know something. I've changed my will. None of you are getting anything when I die." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "What?" Thomas finally said. "Everything. The house, the investments, all of it, goes to charity. You each get $1. That's what your greed and cruelty earned you. $1 each." "You can't do that." "I already did. The will is signed, witnessed, and documented. Martin made sure it's completely contest-proof. So you can stop waiting for me to die. When I do, you'll get nothing." "You're a bitter, hateful old woman," Thomas spat. "I'm a woman who learned that her children were bitter, hateful leeches, and I protected myself accordingly." I hung up and poured myself a glass of the expensive wine Richard and I had been saving. It tasted like victory. Michael's trial was set for 8 months after the charges were filed, but he took a plea deal. He pled guilty to 1 count of financial exploitation and paid full restitution. The $30,000 he'd stolen plus $15,000 in penalties and my legal fees. Part of the plea agreement included formal admission of wrongdoing. His law license was suspended for 2 years. He'd likely never practice in Charleston again. No firm would touch him after stealing from his elderly mother. Jennifer lost several important clients when word spread about her involvement in the APS call and the family situation. Her real estate business dried up. She moved to Atlanta within 6 months, leaving Charleston and its judgment behind. Thomas faced regulatory scrutiny from FINRA. While he wasn't criminally charged, the investigation damaged his reputation in finance. He resigned from his position and took a lesser job with a small firm in Charlotte. Their families fractured in the aftermath. Michael's wife, Susan, divorced him, citing his financial dishonesty. Thomas and David broke up. David told me privately that he'd been horrified by what the family had done to me. Jennifer's relationship with her adult children suffered when they learned how she'd treated me. As for me, I'm still in my house in Charleston. It's warm. I keep the heat at 72 degrees, exactly as I like it. The LLC owns the property, protected from any future claims. My investments are secure in accounts only I control. My will is ironclad, ensuring that the children who tried to steal my dignity and my home will receive exactly what they deserve: nothing. I've gotten involved with the Charleston Women's Shelter, one of the charities that will benefit from my estate. I volunteer twice a week, helping women who've been taken advantage of by people they trusted. My story resonates with them. Betrayal comes in many forms. People ask me if I feel guilty about what happened to my children. I don't. They made their choices when they decided I was worth more dead than alive, when they turned off my heat and told each other I wouldn't last anyway, when they saw me not as a person but as an obstacle between them and money. I gave them life. I raised them. I loved them. And they repaid that by trying to destroy me. The collectors did track them down, just like I knew they would. Michael's confession is public record. Jennifer's license issues are documented. Thomas's regulatory problems followed him to his new job. Their reputations are permanently stained, and their smiles, those calculating, patient smiles they wore while planning my demise, disappeared the moment they realized I'd fought back and won. I'm 74 now, in excellent health, and according to my doctor, likely to live well into my 90s. That's a lot of years for them to think about what they lost, a lot of years to remember that they had a mother who loved them, and they traded that love for money they'll never receive. I sleep soundly every night in my warm house, knowing I protected myself and that my legacy will help people who actually deserve it. Justice isn't always about what you gain. Sometimes it's about making sure the right people lose.